This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and this year we're saying thank you, therapists. BetterHelp therapists have helped over 5 million people worldwide on their mental health journeys. That's millions of stories, millions of journeys, and behind every one is a therapist who showed up, listened, and helped someone take a step forward. Moments in therapy, like the right question, a safe space to cry, or a small win, can change lives. This World Mental Health Day, BetterHelp is honoring those connections and the therapists who make them possible, while showing how easy it is to get guidance from a licensed therapist online with BetterHelp. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. And it works with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. This World Mental Health Day, we're celebrating the therapists who've helped millions of people take a step forward. If you're ready to find the right therapist for you, BetterHelp can help you start that journey. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/PFF. That's betterhelp.com/PFF. Number 5, Ole Miss at number 9, Georgia, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Can Georgia get revenge in the biggest game of the weekend? 9th-ranked Georgia is hosting ESPN's College Game Day this week. Number 5, Ole Miss is coming to town. It's the only matchup between top 10 teams this weekend. The Bulldogs have won 34 of the 48 all-time meetings between these two programs, but they're looking to avenge last season's 28-10 loss to Ole Miss. Georgia was ranked number 3 in the country at the time of that game. Ole Miss is number 16 in the country at the time of that game. So major win for Lane Kiffin last year over Georgia. Also, speaking of Lane Kiffin, this game is pitting two of Nick Saban's former assistants against each other. Because Lane Kiffin and Kirby Smart were co-workers together in 2014 and 2015 at Alabama. You had Nick Saban as the head coach, Lane Kiffin as the offensive coordinator, Kirby Smart as the defensive coordinator. That's a pretty good coaching staff right there. And plenty of other current head coaches in college football. I think Dan Lanning was a grad assistant on that staff too. I mean, that 2015 Alabama staff is like one of the greatest coaching staffs I think I've ever seen in college football. But you had Lane Kiffin and Kirby Smart, who were both of Nick Saban's coordinators during those 2 years too. So it'd be pretty cool to see two former coworkers go head-to-head too, have now been great coaches in the SEC.
And as we know, the greatest accolade for either of them is Lane Kiffin getting 2 10-win seasons at FAU.
True.
That's really what matters here more than you can have your national championships and all that nonsense. You get that done in two 10-win seasons in 3 years at FAU. That's legendary stuff
for
right there.
any Ole Miss or Georgia fans who are coming to the comment section and be like, what on earth are you talking about? Dalton is an FAU alum. That's why I say that. Before you freak out in the comment section, that is why Dalton is
that's really what matters.
That's why he's saying that. That's what he's saying. I don't agree with that.
Maybe Kirby's got to come down to Boca and go match it now. See that?
There you go.
Something happened. You know what? Just if Kirby, if you're ever feeling bored up there in Athens, if nobody else comes calling.
If Kirby leaves Georgia for FAU and not Penn State, I'll quit the show. I'm done.
Legendary stuff. They're a mile and a half. The stadium's a mile and a half from the beach. You can see it from the press box. You can see the beach from the press box. Only stadium in the country you can do that.
All right, let's get off the FAU Owls right now because this is the biggest game of the weekend. Let's talk about the Georgia offense, Dalton, which you have against the Ole Miss defense.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how long can Georgia, because we know what kind of team Georgia is at this point. They're a grinded out, Kirby Smart defense, run game kind of team. I'm just curious how long they can survive with their passing game being just so conservative. Right now, we thought it was breaking out with the vertical throws in the Tennessee game. They went into Tennessee, and Gunnar Stockton was throwing go balls down the field, and it felt like, okay, we finally got the vertical element back in this offense. And then it's kind of scaled back from there. And what you're getting from Gunnar Stockton is a guy who's 99th in the country in big-time throw rate. He's 77th in passing grade on 10-plus yard throws. He has thrown the second most screen passes in the country behind Owen McCown from UTSA, and he's 149th. Think about that. There's 136 teams in the FBS, and he's 149th among qualified quarterbacks in average depth of target. I believe it's 6.5 yards. it's a very conservative offense, and we've seen with Georgia now they're going to emphasize the run game. They're a top, I think it's 10 or 12 country in yards after catch. Colby Young and Zachariah Branch on the outside. They're going to take screens. They're going to just this is the ultimate right now manufacturing offense team. They know what they are. They're going to play complementary football. It's almost, I'm sure some people will some people in Georgia will probably take offense to this, but it's kind of the East Coast version of what I'm seeing from BYU right now, where we're just going to play complementary football and we're not going to screw it up and we're going to play good defense, and whatever we get on offense, it's going to be just enough to win ball games.
You should not be insulted by that too. BYU is an awesome football team.
They are an awesome football team, but you know the standard is the standard at Georgia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it's just this thing of they are not offensively flashy at all, right? So I think for a team like Auburn last week, or even Tennessee earlier, that game earlier was kind of the outlier we're seeing, but the Alabama game, right, 24-21, Georgia is just going to drag you into their kind of fight at this point. That's what's going to happen. They're going to rely on the run defense and not giving up too many explosives, but they're also just still 6 games in, halfway through the season. They're just not that explosive on offense. So Ole Miss, I think the big thing is going to be especially the screen game and out on the edges, making open field tackles, not allowing them to win after the catch. And honestly, maybe you take some chances and see if you can force Gunnar Stockton to throw it downfield. He showed he could do it once in the Tennessee game, but then 3 games since, we really haven't seen it again. We haven't seen this team get explosive. So how long can Georgia go without necessarily leaning much on, because last week 10-plus yard throws against Auburn, and Auburn has the second worst coverage grade in the country. On those throws, he was 4 for 14. So there's just not too much of a downfield element. They're going to beat you in a very conservative manner on offense.
I'm looking at Lane Kiffin and Trinidad Chambliss, who are not very conservative on offense, against a Georgia defense that's kind of been struggling in pass defense this year. Georgia's defense has been phenomenal against the run this year, the 3rd best run defense grade in all of college football. But the Bulldogs have had serious issues defending opposing passing games this year. They allowed .095 EPA per pass. That's only 99th in college football. They're 68th in coverage grade this year, and the 5th lowest pressure rate in the Power 4 this year too. And even those numbers are buoyed against games against teams, I should say, like Marshall, Austin Peay, Kentucky, and Auburn that really struggled to throw the football. Against legitimate passing attacks like Tennessee and Alabama, Georgia has only a 54.2 coverage grade and a 57.1 pass rush grade too. Now that could be an issue in this game against a legitimate Ole Miss passing attack headlined by quarterback Trinidad Chambliss. 80.8 passing grade this year. That's 25th among all quarterbacks in the country. Ole Miss is also 16th in receiving grade in the country too. However, I will say Trinidad Chambliss was not very good this past week against Washington State. A season-low 54.2 passing grade against the Cougars. He committed his first 2 turnover-worthy plays of the season against Washington State, which is obviously not a great opponent they're playing either, and Ole Miss barely escaped with a win in that game too. So, yes, Georgia's pass defense has not been very good, especially against really good opponents this year like Tennessee and Alabama, but also Trinidad Chambliss has to bounce back after his not a great performance last week against Washington State.
No, he does need to bounce back. He wasn't his best last week, and I think a big part of that was Ole Miss not finishing drives, especially early in the game. Things tightened down in the red zone, and Ole Miss, I think there's times where we've seen that they have struggled to finish drives and put 7s up instead of 3s, right? So I think that's going to be a big thing is Ole Miss finishing drives, and I think just Chambliss, he was just a little bit off, and then all of a sudden I think Ole Miss realized they were in a football game that they didn't think would be one going into the day as, what was it, were they a 32-point favorite in that game, something crazy like that. All of a sudden, they were in a football game, and you felt kind of the shock factor. And Lane Kiffin was worried about it, coming off a bye week, noon start, Washington State, out of conference. He was worried about it, and they came out like it was a trap game. So I'm going to cut him a little bit of slack for that, right? It's not necessarily excusable, but I'm going to cut him some slack. The reason Chambliss could have success is because Georgia still has the 5th lowest pass rushing grade in the Power 4. They're just not getting pressure with the defensive line. 6 sacks this year. 5 of them from linebackers. 1 sack from their defensive line this year, halfway through the season. So Chambliss is going to have time. I think is a very interesting battle between Chambliss and even Kewan Lacey in the backfield. And then you have C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson at linebacker cleaning everything up. I think you're going to see a whole lot of spies on Chambliss. They do not want him getting north and south as a scrambler. That was something that really hurt LSU when Ole Miss played them. So I think this game, for Ole Miss, I really think it just comes down to Chambliss bouncing back and playing great great football. If he does, it feels like he has been the biggest reason for their success, and he would have to be the biggest reason that they would win this football game.
Ultimately, Dalton, in the biggest game of the weekend, matchup between two top 10 teams right now, who will win between Georgia and Ole Miss?
I think Ole Miss, they would need to have Chambliss and Lacey play outstanding games, I think, to win this game. And last year, they really won this game with their defense. Princely Amon Mielen, remember Jared Ivey dominating off the edges, and Carson Beck just stood no chance in the pocket. Ole Miss doesn't have a pass rush like that this year. So I think they're going to have to be even better on offense, and that just comes down to me. Chambliss and Lacey, especially those two against the linebackers, is a big battle. I think Georgia's just so good at playing to their identity in games like this and just scratching and clawing their way through these games, especially with the run defense, I think is going to be a big factor. I don't think this time, unless Chambliss just plays a Heisman moment type of game, I don't think Ole Miss has the horses in the trenches on both sides this time, O-line and D-line, especially the drop-off in the D-line from last year. I think you get kind of another close to the vest game for Georgia, but I don't know that Ole Miss in the trenches, especially their O-line also, can really match the physicality. I'm going to take Georgia 24-17.
Yeah, I have Georgia as well, 28-27. I think this game could come down to the wire. Both quarterbacks could have success against these defenses. I'll trust Kirby Smart to win this game at home, though, and avenge last year's loss, but like my score prediction shows, I mean, it's going to be an incredible ball game. I can see either team winning this game, but I think Georgia will pull it out at home with a 1-point win over the Ole Miss Rebels.